Greetings everyone, welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, it's my pleasure to give you a welcome. Today we are going to be doing a step-by-step on how I achieved this super cute half lemonade, half box braid style. So stick around, we're about to get right into it. So starting off with the hair, I'm using the Expressions pre-stretch, and I did ask her to get the shortest length that she could find. Just because we're doing a bob, we don't need the hair to be that long. For the boho pieces, we'll be using the free tress water wave and of course that neat braid gel, comb, and some hair ties. So I'm going to start off by parting her hair in half from ear to ear. Okay, so it is a half and half style. The back will be box braids and the front is going to be like lemonade braids. So I just was so tempted to do that little drawing initial in the jam thing. I never did it before, so here it is. Whoever's name starts with the S, or you go free hairstyle. But anyway, I know I said ear to ear, but actually what I'm going to do is the side where the braids will be hanging on, I'm going to part it halfway on that side. So I want to put a couple of rows of knotless on the side that the braids will be hanging. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. You'll see what I do as I continue to work, but I'm just parting off that first subsection, and I'm not going to do any pre-parting this time just because it's a half and half and it's just be box braids in the back. I don't have to worry about anything lining up in the front like a middle part or anything like that. So I'm just using, of course, that gel or that neat braid gel to help me reinforce and clean up my parts. Okay, this is optional. You don't have to do this, but a lot of people like to do this to help you get cleaner parts. So now I'm just starting my first knotless, and we are doing, I would say, a medium, so not too big and not too small, just right in between. And I'm not going to go too much into detail on how to do a knotless braid because I have other videos that detail that, but this is just to really show you the process, and I will show a different braid more slowed down just so you can get a better idea of what I do. I like to make sure that each section is completely saturated with whatever jam I'm using, and then I'm going to create 3 sections and start braiding just like a regular braid. I like to add the hair in between my pointer and my pinky finger. And again, I know you can't see it that well here, but I will show you all a closer view shortly. And I'm adding those boho pieces in at the straight end. You want to add that in on the end that's straight and let the curlier end hang from out the braid. So I would say right now I'm going to only add about maybe 2 pieces of boho hair in each braid, 2 to 3 pieces. I don't want it to be like super full. I want a nice balance of curly hair in these braids, so I'm just being mindful of how many pieces that I add in there. And if you're used to being here, you'll know that some of this stuff is gonna be pretty repetitive, but I like to say it just in case I have any new people coming on. So to get clean parts, you want to make sure you go over it again and again. Of course, this is a clipped video. This is hours worth of footage, so it's really shortened into 15 to 20 minutes. So I definitely go over these parts even more than what I'm showing you in the video. So just make sure you're using that jam and you're reinforcing everything. Don't be afraid to put that product to use, y'all. Okay. And so I did saturate this section, and again I'm just taking 3 strands and I'm braiding like a regular braid. I'm going to take that braiding hair, and at the half mark I'm just going to add it in between my pointer and my thumb finger, and then as I braid on, I'll add the piece that's hanging out in between my pointer and my thumb finger. So here it is again. I added it in halfway, I braid it on, and then once my hand turns over, I added in that other piece that was hanging out right in between my pointer and my thumb. And I just keep this pretty repetitive throughout the whole braid until the finish. Adding in the boho pieces, I like to add that in that middle strand, and then I just continue to braid on. So like I said, the curly end should be hanging out and the straight end should be being braided into the braid. And then once you get down to the end, you want to tie a knot to seal the braid. And how I do that, I just take a small piece from the end of the braid, a small piece of hair, and I'm going to wrap that around my thumb. And then I'm going to use my hand to pull and create a loop, and then I'll push that piece through the loop. Okay, I really hope this makes sense. So I'm just going to do it one more time. I'll wrap it right around my thumb. I open up that loop that I just created, and I'm going to use my pointer finger to push it through. Then I like to pull on it just to tighten everything up. And I repeat this on all the braids, most importantly because you don't want the braids to unravel, but also so that when you get ready to curl the ends, you would have a nice barrier in between the braids and what parts of the hair that you're curling. So I'm just moving on up and I'm parting it straight across. Okay, and just like I said, reinforce those parts. Make sure you take your time and clean everything up. And if you notice, I'm lifting up each section of the hair just to make sure that it's making sense. Okay, I want to make sure that the width of the section that I'm doing is matching the other boxes that I created down below. So you do that by lifting up the hair and just making sure that everything looks good. And just a little advice for your knotless braids, you want to make sure that you're keeping your fingers as close as possible to the client's scalp. Okay, and also as you move down, you want to keep your fingers close so that the braid doesn't slack and everything is nice and tight. And you also want to take that gel and make sure that you're adding it down the braid as you're braiding, just to help you blend the client's natural hair in with the braiding hair. It helps create a very smooth transition and gets rid of any flyaways that you may occur during the style. And here's that closer view that I told you all I would show you. I just parted out 3 sections. I'm taking that hair, I'm adding it in between my thumb and my pointer. I'm braiding on, and the piece that was hanging out, I'm just going to add that in between my thumb and my pointer after I turn over the braid. Okay, so here it is again. I added it in between. Then as I turn my hand over, I added in the extra piece. And there's no set amount of braiding hair pieces that I add into each braid. I just like to go with the flow of the clients, because you'll notice that some clients don't need to add as much hair. Like if they have thicker hair, you may not need to add as much braiding hair. So I always suggest just to go according to the client's hair type and texture. As I moved up with the box braid or the knotless section of the style, I did begin to add a few more curly pieces. So instead of 2, I did do maybe 3 or 4. And again, I'm just going with the flow. And so here I'm showing you again how I tied that knot, just in case you didn't catch it the first time. It's wrapping around my thumb. I'm opening up that loop, and I'm going to use my pointer finger just to help me push it through and pull it tight. So it's pretty repetitive. Once you get the hang of it on a couple braids, you'll get the flow to do the rest of the braids. Now I'm going to show you how I get the curly end. So I'm grouping all of the ends together on the end of the hair. I did remove all the curly boho pieces out of the way so I could just have the straight braiding hair at the end. I'm going to take a separate piece of braiding hair and line it up about halfway with those ends. And the other half that was loose, I'm going to start to wrap it around right where the braid stops, right where we tied those knots at. I'm going to wrap it really tight there. So maybe wrap it around 4 or 5 times. Then I'm going to start to diagonally wrap that piece down the rest of the hair. So you will see it here. It kind of looks almost like you're twisting it in a sense. And when you are wrapping it, you don't want to wrap it tight. Okay, you want to make sure that it's very loosely wrapped. If it's too tight, it won't scrunch. So as you see, I'm pulling the hair that I wrapped around, and it's going to scrunch up as a curl like so. All right, if this is too complicated for you, you could use some type of perm rods or flexi rod. You could do the braid technique, or you could just do the Bantu knot technique, where you just wrap it around like a Bantu knot and dip it in water. Okay. You could even use the throwback hack where they take foil and create the curls. So try different ways and see what works best for you. But either way, you just want to dip it in hot water at the end. So I'm just finishing up this back half just so we can get to what is my favorite part, to do the design cornrows in the front. And I'll be right back. All right, so once we completed our back section of boho box braids, we're just gonna move on to the front. And I'm going off a picture that she showed me, but this part could be done at your own desire, meaning you could do it however you choose to do it. Really, you could freestyle it, but this one is pretty similar to, you know, all the videos and pictures that's been going viral over the internet. It's kind of giving you like the lemonade vibes, and then they put a few braids in there that kind of twirls and turn a bit. So again, this is another part where you could pretty much go with the flow. And I didn't want the braids to be too bulky, so I'm making sure I'm parting off a pretty small section. I believe it's only going to be about 6 braids in the front, and I'm using that neat braid gel. I'm just smoothing it all over the entire section for the braid. Okay, you want to do it on the front end and on the back end and smooth it out good with your finger and the comb. Then I parted off my first subsection, making sure I leave a little bit of the edges out, and I just want to braid that first subsection just like a regular braid. Okay, I have 3 sections and I'm braiding it on. I like to braid it maybe 3 or 4 times just to lock in that first piece. And once I got that in, I'm going to start creating my first stitch line. All right. I like to use my pointer finger and my pinky finger to create my stitches. You could use the comb or whatever stitching tool that works best for you. Just make sure that when you're stitching, you're keeping your fingers close together and you're keeping them set in place. You don't want them to be too loose because it will cause your stitches to slack. Okay. And you want to make sure you're creating a new stitch line every time your hand turns over, okay? Make sure you're pulling it tight and you're keeping everything nice and secured, okay? So don't get me wrong. When I said pull it tight, I don't want you to hurt the client, okay? Make sure that the client still remains comfortable, but just get it tight enough that it's nice and neat. And I really wanted this look to be as clean as possible, so I am doing super small stitches, okay? If you didn't know this, your stitches can be different sizes. Some people stitch a little bit bigger, like they'll have bigger stitch sections than others, but for this, I'm just making sure I do them stitches really tiny, just so I can get a very clean look. If you didn't notice, I haven't added any braiding hair to the braid yet. So since her hair was pretty full, I decided not to add in any braiding hair on the actual braid. Okay, so I've said this before. If you want a nice, clean, sleek braid, you want to add as less braiding hair as possible if you don't want a bulky braid, okay? Even to the point of not adding any hair. So I didn't add any braiding hair until I got to the very end of the braid. Then I began to add in the braiding hair just to make sure it's full going down to the ends, and also added those boho pieces to the ends as well. Okay, so even for the cornrow parts, you want to make sure you're adding in the boho pieces once you get towards the end of the braid. So now I'm just moving on to my next braid. I'm doing the same thing, reinforcing the parts. Make sure I saturate my sections well and mold them down really well, and just taking my time and really rocking these stitch braids. I also have more detailed videos on my channel about stitch braiding. So if you want to go back and check those out, by all means, go ahead and do so. And you'll get a lot of good tips and advice. Don't forget to use that jam or gel as you're braiding, okay? If it starts to get dry, don't hesitate to add more gel. So now we're moving on. We're getting closer to getting done, y'all. So I'm thinking I got like 4 braids left. So of course I'm getting excited. And to make this little curve design, I just parted off that first section that's gonna start off. And then I continue to part on where I'm gonna loop it at. And I like to say, just imagine that your comb is like a pencil and you're drawing something. Use that comb to guide you to create the shape and the lines that you're going for. So as you can see, I just started up at the top there and I made this braid just do a loop and curve around. And I'm taking my time. I'm making sure I continue to add those stitches in throughout the entire braid, just so I can make sure that the work is going to be super clean. I'm being very particular. As you can see, I'm using my comb just then to make sure that may have escaped from the other side and trying to jump in the wrong braid can get back over to the side where it belongs. So as you can see, I did get to complete the rest of the braids, and you'll see kind of where I went with the design. So now we're just moving on to the baby hairs, or should I say edges. But I just used the flat iron to give it a curl, and you know I'm using my edge booster. That's my go-to on these edges right now. And I'm using some hot water just to dip the ends of those curls that we had created into the water. So once you dry that with a towel, but be very careful because you don't want to burn the client. I just took my scissors and I'm snipping off where I tied the knot at the end of the curl, and you just want to unravel it, and then you'll see that you're going to open up this beautiful curl. So once that's all done, you just want to go in with your finishing touches, adding whatever mousse or whatever curling cream, just to make the boho hair get that extra luscious wet look, or just to give it an extra pop. And just like I said, this is a bob style, so I am going to use the scissors just to cut everything nice and even, because as you can tell, some of the boho pieces is hanging, just a little bit longer, and you want everything to be nice and even for that clean look. So you'll see I'm just going to go in and completely cut everything into that nice bob look. And I just want to add really quick, if you are a beginner, take your time and don't be too hard on yourself. All right. It takes time to be great, but look, trust me, if you keep going, you're going to get there. So have some grace and have fun, because this is art. Okay. So here are our final results, y'all. After I did the finishing touches, and y'all, when I tell y'all, she sent me a tip and she added a message to let me know how much she really loved her hair. It did turn out super cute. It's super convenient and out of the way, and that is a plus. All right. So I hope you all were able to get some type of information or inspiration from this video. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Bless you for watching.